How's it going, everyone? Having a little bit of technical difficulties here. We're going to get Ferris back in here in a moment. But yeah, we're talking about Colston Loveland, and I just think his profile is very exciting. Hello, sir. Welcome back.
Hello. All right, cool.
Yeah, I just had StreamYard kick me out of my own stream and end it, which I've never seen before. I've literally seen people like
That's
get
crazy.
their phone die and them still being or whatever their computer die and them still being able to join back on the same stream. So apologize for that. So this is part two of two parts, but yeah, let's get right back into it. We were talking about Colson Loveland and Tyler Warren, and then we're jumping into the Cam Scatabo and Quinton Judkins. Ferris's spicy take on Scatabo, having him ranked so highly, and kind of Judkins a little bit lower than consensus. So yeah, what are you? Sorry, jump back into your Scatabo. You said you think he's going to be a three. He has the ability to be a three-down workhorse, and I'll let you jump back in.
Yeah, so I mean, I think he's just a guy who can get 300 plus touches. Of course, there's some caveat with that. We have to see if a team is willing to invest the draft capital into him and he gets a good landing spot. I think right now he's projected as like a day three, a round three pick. I would like to see him, get picked in the second round and have a good landing spot, but I do think he is someone who kind of profiles to me as like maybe a more athletic David Montgomery or like in the James Conner mold, and those are guys that I think can easily put up like back end RB1 numbers or high end number or RB2 numbers for you. So I do think if he gets the opportunity, he is good enough as a runner of the football. Like he doesn't have the, I would say, long speed or breakaway speed like someone like a Derrick Henry or Saquon has, but he is efficient enough and has enough burst and enough like I would say elusiveness ability that he could be a more than a capable NFL rusher. And yeah, with his receiving upside, I think he has one of the best receiving profiles besides Genti in this class. So that's a reason I'm high on him because I do think in fantasy, we want the guys who can catch like 60 plus catches as a running back, and he's someone that I can see doing that. So that's why I'm just higher consensus on him, and big fan of him as a prospect.
So yeah, and then Judkins, how I guess what I'm sorry, did you already talk about Judkins?
No, I didn't. I can talk about it as well. Yeah, Judkins, the reason I'm a bit lower on him than consensus is he hasn't really shown the receiving upside at all. I think his, yards per route run numbers have been like he's like a point 0.7 career number. So he's not really someone that profiles as like a three down workhorse. Like he as a runner, he does have the size and athletic ability to be like a early down, rusher, but as from a receiving perspective, he hasn't really shown that yet. Do I think he can catch a football? Yeah, probably. But it's a huge projection, right? So, and I don't, I'm not really, when I looked at like the analytics of him as a rusher, he doesn't really do that well in terms of like creating separate yards on his own. Like his stuff rate is not great. He doesn't really create that many explosive runs either. Um, so I'm just, I think from a fantasy perspective, not as excited about the player. I don't see like the upside for him to be like an RB one on your team. I do think he can, if he gets the right landing spot, because I think most likely he will go second round to someone.
Yeah,
And
most likely.
yeah, so I do think from a landing spot perspective, he's gonna probably give you enough volume as like a volume based play to be valuable in your team. But he's not someone I'm really targeting, I would say. Like I would just take him if he falls in drafts personally.
Yeah, he just kind of seems low ceiling, which I don't.
Yeah.
I think the pass catching he kind of just reminds me of like a David Montgomery type, where it's like he can be solid, like he can give you like whatever 15 points a game or something like that if he's in a good spot, but it's not. He's never really going to be. He could be three down workhorse, but I don't really see a team really giving him the reins on that. Um, and yeah, like I agree. Like I
Yeah.
think he had better testing numbers than Scatabo, but I don't necessarily know if it really matters. Like if they get similar draft capital, Scatabo definitely has the higher pass catching upside, and I also think Scatabo is kind of just he has kind of meme potential where he like people just fall in love with the I'm sure we'll get some crazy clips or some social media stuff that goes viral with him. So I think that also like is weirdly valuable in Dynasty when whatever someone out of your 12 or 11 other league mates will fall in love with him, and you'll be able to sell him if you do want to, and his value will go up. So I agree. I think it's a bit of a spicy take, but I don't really see Judkins. Obviously, whatever, if he lands on a really good landing spot and he's the early down guy, and that could boost him up a little bit just in terms of value, but not a guy I'm pounding the table for.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think Scatabo is definitely, we'll see with the draft capital, but I think he could be a really good value, especially if he does fall a little bit later in drafts. Like if he doesn't go second round, he goes third round, but to a spot where it's not evident that he will get the full workload right away. But then as the season goes on, he kind of gets more and more. And then by the end of the season, we're like, oh wait, like he's first round base first pick value guy or something. You know what I mean? Like he definitely
yeah.
has that potential based on the stuff you're calling out. So we had some chats from before that I don't have because the stream ended, but why don't we go over some other uh, let's just go. Let's hit that chat first. So it was kind of talking about your JJ McCarthy ranking, where you had him right next to Bo Nix, and I know you're a big JJ McCarthy guy. So kind of why do you have him higher than market, and like how high would you take him like in a startup setting?
Yeah, so I mean, I actually have him higher than Bo Nix. I have Bo Nix down. I would say, yeah, I have Bo Nix a bit lower than him. So uh, the reason why I have him so high is I just think the his situation is as good as it gets in NFL. You know, I think we saw what
Oh, there you
Sam
go. Yeah.
Darnold, yeah, we saw what Sam Darnold was able to do with like Kevin O'Connell and the receiving threats that he has with like Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson. I think JJ is just a better player than Darnold, and I think I did like him actually coming out a lot more, I would say, than consensus. I think he's a very capable NFL starter. He has like some potential rushing upside that he didn't necessarily have to show at the college level. So I do think he's probably somewhere in like the. It's not going to be like he's going to be running for a bunch of yards, but probably somewhere in like the Trevor Lawrence, like Herbert range, most likely as a
Yep.
rusher, as he's not a zero there. And yeah, I just think that situation is elite, and he's good enough as a player that he's probably going to put up good numbers, and his value is just going to rise, I think, from this year to next year. And I can definitely see him being like a second round pick. And then in terms of where I'll take him, I mean, you don't have to take him that early. Like right now, he's still going in the fourth round in most drafts. I've been even like a couple months ago before there was like question marks about like whether he's going to be the starter or not for this next year. I was taking him on the 4 or 5 turn basically in every single draft just because I thought that's like a crazy good value.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, and even now, I would still take him in like the mid third, late third. But you don't have to in most cases. He's like probably a fourth round pick in most drafts. So I'm just very high on him, and he's not a player that I would want to be low on in my portfolio.
Yeah, no, those are all really good points. Like we just those Shanahan McAvey systems are just so amazing for quarterbacks, and we've seen like I don't know, like you can compare him to like right like a Brock Purdy who I think is less talented than JJ McCarthy. Obviously, he's proved it more because he's actually played versus McCarthy, but when you have Justin Jefferson, Addison, Hawkinson, good O line, good play caller, like it just gives you so much leeway. And I'm sure he'll have a little bit of growing pains, but
Yeah,
um, I think yeah, like basically imagine Brock Purdy, but with a stronger arm, can run, and with even better weapons. So I don't see any reason why he should be going behind. Because I mean, I've seen Purdy go whatever, like right 3-4 turn range, and JJ McCarthy almost always falls at least to the fourth and sometimes late fourth, early fifth, which I just think is a little bit asinine based on like people aren't projecting forward enough based on that. So could be wrong, but it's just kind of a no fail situation when you're with those weapons and that coaching staff.
Yeah, and the range I have him in is like I have him right next to Caleb and Stroud, and I don't think that JJ McCarthy is necessarily like a more talented player than both of those
Yeah,
guys. But I do think his, at least compared to like someone like Stroud, his situation is a lot better. Like Stroud, unfortunately, like the O-line is not looking very good, and the wide receiver situation for this next year is also I mean it's okay, it's better probably than what he had last year, but with the injuries that they had with Tank and Diggs last year and the O-line situation not being as very good, I have some at least short-term concerns with Stroud as a player. Um, but I think he's still a great talent, right? And then Caleb, same thing. Like I think Caleb still has some things left to prove, and I think his situation this year is going to be a lot better as well. So, but I think those guys I could see all of them finishing like around the same range in terms of value. So that's why I put them together.
yeah, and I think like situation is so important for quarterbacks. We just talked
Yeah,
about right like rookie quarterbacks throwing them into the fire in a bad situation and that just kind of ruining them. We see it time and time again. It's so important. Very few quarterbacks can kind of transcend that coaching and talent situation around them. Like some, but it's a very very small few that can do that. That can kind of uh, carry their team. And I think you want to be placing your bets if you don't have one of those top right like Lamar, Jaden Daniels, uh, first round running Konami code quarterbacks. Like you want to be betting on the pocket passers that are in a good system, have good weapons, and that's just going to be more and more evident. So yeah, I've been trying to sell like kind of some of the. I don't have very much Stroud to begin with, but it's like
yep,
the guys where the perceived talent, like you said, like Stroud is probably a better quarterback than a JJ McCarthy, but it's like it doesn't matter in the game we're playing. Like we're not playing I have the best real life football talent game. We're playing fantasy football, and so that makes it a huge difference. I will also call out. I still think I think Kyler. He obviously hasn't been rushing as much as he was before pre ACL, but I still think MHJ year two growth, Trey McBride being there. And he runs enough. I still think he's a pretty good value because he falls a lot of times to the fourth round. I haven't seen him really fall past like the mid fourth. So, but yeah, as if you want to snag in a startup, snag him as your QB1 there. I still think he gives you low end QB1 production, but I think at his cost, that's reasonable. And maybe yeah, he's not a great passer, but just with the weapons around him and his adequate amount of running, I think still a good bet there.
yeah, I think like a 3-4 turn, he's fine to take. Like I would rather have like a Kyler in a 3-4 turn than like a Bo Nix on a 2-3 turn as a player. I think
Yeah,
that
and
kind of
sorry, I didn't mean to
no,
interrupt
all
you there.
good. Go ahead.
Yeah, Bo Nix. I mean, I just think obviously rookie had a good season, but it's just like I don't think it's really that good of a situation. Like I think he has the coaching aspect. I think Sean Payton is like a pretty good play caller, but I don't. Barring, I mean, even if they draft like a first round, like a Loveland or a wide receiver or something like that, it's like I just don't believe in Bo Nix as a talent to, like I said, kind of like transcend. You kind of need both, like the perfect storm when you have a guy who isn't just all world talent. Like you need the coaching, you need the weapons, and and then, but yeah, it's like with Bo Nix, it's like he's going to the 2-3 turn. I just think there's a lot of downside there,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
the upside for his production. We saw he had a good season, but it's not really difference making at that cost. So definitely agree with um, you putting JJ McCarthy, and I think I would put Kyler above him as well. And I just think it's a lot of wish casting and just being excited about his rookie year, which I think we have to take the context and really measure that. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah, I'm okay with Bo Nix, but I'm not taking him on a 2-3 turn. Like if you're getting him like in the early fourth and like the same range as like a Kyler, Brock, or like that, I'm fine with that.
yeah,
I just don't want to. There's a lot more guys I like on the 2-3 turn that I'm not gonna pay that price for him.
yeah, and it just seems like I don't know. Some people just love Bo Nix, right? Like, yeah, I've
Yeah,
seen
they
him
do.
go. I've seen him go. I think like late second round a few times in the startups that we have done or that I've seen around. So just the opportunity cost there is way too high for me.
Yep.
So let's jump back into the rookies for a little bit. So the kind of next tier of wide receivers that we have is Emeka Egbuka and Luther Burden the third. Um, I just I think Emeka Egbuka, it's not like a super sexy profile. Like he's mostly a slot, and he doesn't have like crazy production. He doesn't. It's like kind of just good everywhere. But I think in the modern NFL, kind of that role, the kind of like big slot role, where you're if he lands in a situation where he's getting that role and he lands with adequate quarterback play, like I think it's kind of similar to I know Jacob Sanderson. Shout out to Jacob. He was kind of talking about how Addison versus like a QJ or these guys with this perceived higher ceiling because of kind of testing numbers or other stuff. It's kind of assumed that they have a higher ceiling, but it's like it's almost the well-roundedness and the fact that they're not gonna bust is actually like part of their ceiling. Like it's like, okay, what is the point of like if Igbuka gets drafted in the first round to a solid enough situation, like he's probably going to rise up in value, and he probably, based on his skill set, will produce a pretty solid season based on his profile. So I'm just a little bit scared off on Burden, and I think maybe at the very top end of the outcomes, he has a higher ceiling. But I think it's a little bit more of a mystery box with him, and I think there's a lot bigger bust potential for Burden. So yeah, where are you at on those two guys?
Yeah, so I think for both of them, definitely Egbuka is a much higher floor player than someone like a Burden. Um, and the ceiling, honestly, is I think both of them have a comparable ceiling. Like it's pending landing spot. I think that's kind of where I'm gonna move him up or down in my rankings. I think definitely for Burden, he needs a landing spot that will allow him kind of to play the Rashi Rice type role, like a hybrid Rashi Rice or like I would say DJ Moore mix type of player.
Sure.
He does need those like manufactured touches and like a team to be able to use him in that perspective. And if they don't, then I just don't necessarily think he's the type of player that you can just stick him on the outside and he's gonna produce for you. So I'm gonna see where he lands. If he lands with like a coaching staff and the other wide receivers on the team where I think it's a favorable situation, then I'm gonna be a bit more willing to take him because I do think he has like the athletic upside and the skill set that if he was to get that role, he can definitely produce for you. So we'll see with him. I'm not like super high or low on him. I think probably a little bit below consensus for most people, but um, I definitely will want some shares if he gets the good landing spot. And then yeah, with Egbuka, I think I totally agree with your point and what Jacob mentions is like we shouldn't put a ceiling on his potential. I think if he lands with a team where he does profile as like maybe the clear first option or the clear second option, and there's not someone that's going to kind of put a cap on him there, I definitely can see him as like an Amon Ra type player potentially, right? Like if he's given that opportunity and at the NFL level, I think he can actually handle being a wide receiver one for some time. Like not long term, I think they will need someone that brings a bit more, at least in terms of like being an outside player and kind of being able to also handle like the role with him. But I do think he can produce similar to like Zay Flowers, Devontae Smith, like Chris Olave, like in that range, right? So if he gets a good landing spot, I'm gonna move him up into the same range as those guys because I do think like they have a similar type of outcome potentially. So yeah, I would say both players are players that I'm gonna take a few shares of. I'm not reaching or like being higher than market on either right now, but pending landing spot, I could move them a little bit up or down.
Yeah, they seem like the kind of guys where like in most classes they're kind of like the 112, 201 guys.
Yeah.
But they might get pushed up, right? Like just due to the class, kind of like we were talking about before. Like I can see them going 107, 108 or something like that. And it's not like I am out, but it's just not super high upside blue chip prospects. Like I mean, we were getting Brock Bowers last year at like the 107, 108 sometimes, which is just like completely different game you're playing there.
Yep. But yeah, I would say Egbuka for sure is I prefer him a bit more than Burden in most scenarios. I just have them together because the landing spot could move him up or down. But yeah, Ibuka, I think again, he probably could profile as someone like a Chris Godwin, Amon Ra type player if he gets the right landing spot. So in that case, I will definitely be trying to get more shares of him than I have him like, compared to the where I have him ranked right now. So
Yeah, I feel like Burden is going to, I don't know. I just have a feeling, a gut feeling. I feel like Burden is going to be one of those guys. He's going to fall a little bit on draft day. He's going to go in like the 25 to 32 range to a team we really like. And then people are going to just go bonkers for him. I think I can see it now. So,
yeah, if that happened, I'll probably be fading like the
yeah,
most. Yeah.
exactly. He's going to be the 104 because he lands on the Bills or the Chiefs or something, or one of those other good teams with a good quarterback. I can see it. Um, so yeah, let's talk Matthew Golden and then a few later round guys that we like, and then let's kind of just go through and compare where we are different on our rankings because we haven't really talked about that yet. But yeah, Matthew Golden is the kind of this last guy that we think is going to get projected first round draft capital based on what we're seeing. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know what to think about Matthew Golden because it really was after Isaiah Bond got hurt, he came on strong in the second half of the season, and all the ball knowers, all the film watchers love him, and it looks like with his combine and the combination of just kind of being at Texas and getting that media coverage and being in the spotlight, that he's going to go pretty high in the draft. Maybe people are projecting he may even go above Tet McMillan. So where are you at with him? I feel like I'm going to be out on him once we get to the rookie draft setting. I don't want to say that for sure, but how are you feeling about Golden? I have him in a similar range here where I think uh, it's like
Yeah,
there's still upside, but it's not like a super sexy profile.
I mean, I think on just most of my teams that I have, I p- probably won't be that in on him because I do think, you're probably taking him in a range where you can get guys like a Godwin or an Adams, a Hill, Mike Evans. Like, if you're in a competitive team, I'd rather have all those guys above him. And if you're a rebuilding team, I just think there's higher upside options compared to him. I don't really necessarily perceive Matthew Golden like being a high-end wide receiver one on a team, or like even being a wide receiver one on a team. To me, he kind of portfolios more of like Brandon Cooks, Jerry Judy, like that type of player, like a solid wide receiver two, solid to good wide receiver two for an NFL team. Um, but I don't think his ceiling outcomes are like as likely, as where his draft like the cost to acquire him might be, right? So I probably won't have many shares of him. I have a few shares of him in like the Devy leagues I had, and honestly, I thought I thought after the first 2 years he was kind of just a dead asset, and then
Yeah,
he had like this crazy run out at Texas the last couple weeks of the season, and he's people are like the people who are saying he's the wide receiver one in this class. I think that's just a bit too aggressive. I don't really see that. He does have like I would say some of the numbers like that he put up are not really reflective of the talent. I do think he is a better talent than maybe some of the just the raw like yards he put up. But I just don't. I'm not like I would say I'm not like very high on him. I'm like at market or like slightly below market.
Yeah, it's like I think both of us have him in a similar range. It's like you kind of have to, based on the draft capital, like put him there because of just the inherent value of what that will present if he's drafted. If he's whatever, if he goes pick 12, um, it's like okay, it's like you're going with the draft capital, but it's like
Yeah,
what are you really winning when you win here? Um,
you're winning Jerry Judy in my eyes. That's like, and do I want that? Probably not. Not at that cost. No way.
so yeah, so the next kind of tier of guys here, and then we can move on to kind of debating a little bit. But I see you have Tootin up here, pretty high. I see you have Caleb Johnson here, pretty low. Any guys in this range you want to call out, or any other guys lower down that you just want to kind of plant your flag on as if they get the adequate draft capital, I'm all in.
Yeah. Three guys. So Jalen Noel. Um, I'll start with him. I think I'm pretty high on him compared to consensus right now. And I do think he's moving up in people's rankings. So we'll see how that ends up. I just think he profiles as a wide receiver that could, pending landing spot, like he can be someone that gives you solid numbers. And if I'm paying a second, like a mid second or late second to get him for wide receiver two numbers, I'm more than happy to do that. And I do think he isn't as talented, I would say, as someone like or someone as like a Egbuka, but I think their portfolios are actually quite similar. If you look at them as players, right? I think they both will play a similar role, like for an NFL team. So if he gets a good landing spot, I'm pretty excited to get him, if especially if I can get him with like a mid or late second on my team. Um, and then yeah, other guys like Tuden, I'm also very high on. Tuden, the only thing that I'm hesitant about right now, and that why I have him probably even lower than what I'll have him later, is like he's kind of projected to get round four draft capital, which is not ideal.
Yeah, not good.
If he goes day two, like second round or third round, then I'm definitely moving him up. So I have him kind of there right now just because the expected draft capital isn't at a range where like I would be certain about him, but he's a player that I just think has, if he's able to develop a bit more consistency, like he sometimes isn't patient or like lacks the vision as a runner. He just has like, but he just has the juice, Like some of these runners, like
Absolutely.
when they see like an opening, they hit it hard, and he can be someone that is not like only utilized in like zone schemes. Like he can run it up the gap. He can be reliable as a pass catcher. I think he's someone who needs development still, but his upside is as high as like I would say some of the other like back end RBs and like first round RBs in this class. So I am pretty excited to draft him. Again, we'll see what the draft capital says with him. And then yeah, so Tuden, Noel, and then the other guy I'll probably be higher than consensus on. Um, yeah, in most leagues will probably be like Jack Bash. He's someone that you can probably get with like a late second or even early third. And I think to me, he's like, if there's gonna be one guy who comes out and puts up consistent like 900 to 1,000 yard seasons with like 6 to 8 touchdowns, I think it's gonna be him. I think he's just a very reliable pass catcher, kind of reminds me actually of like a Jacoby Myers, right? And Jacoby Myers has been like one of the biggest values in Dynasty over the last years, and people are still low on him. So I don't necessarily think Jack Batch will be a player that like rises to like very high prices, but he is someone that you're gonna just want to have on your team, as like a wide receiver three, wide receiver two, or flex option. Yeah, I just really like his like the reliability he has as a player, and we'll see what a landing spot is. I think if he lands in like a McVay type offense, or like he will be utilized in the right way to like uh, do well for you.
Yeah, I mean he was putting up pretty crazy numbers as a tight end all the way back at LSU, and then had a good Senior Bowl. And yeah, I agree. I think he's just a good all around talent. And he'll at we are going to get him in rookie drafts. He can definitely produce for you and just give you a flex filler, which honestly at that cost is like pretty valuable. Um, and then yeah, Tootin. I think it's this weird thing with this draft class too, where there's just so many running backs that like some of these guys are inevitably going to fall to the fourth round. And I
Yeah.
don't, it's like, I don't, obviously we want the guys with higher draft capital, but it's like, I think it's going to be this weird dynamic where it's like, they're pretty much the same guys that are getting drafted in the late second round that are going in the early fourth round. So I definitely think there's going to be a lot of value in that kind of mid to late second round, early third round of guys that get lower draft capital, but maybe they have an easier path to getting touches, or just the situation kind of is able to play out for them. And I think that goes to Caleb Johnson, where you have him lower the consensus. And it's with him, I think I'm not I think he's very landing spot dependent.
Yeah,
It's
definitely.
like he's a really good outside zone runner. And if he lands in a system, there's a few systems where that could work out really well. But if it's anywhere else other than those places, I just don't think he really has the skill set to be scheme to outwork the scheme. So I think I think it's a fair. It's obviously lower than consensus, but I think it's obviously will change our evaluation of him if he does go to one of those teams that runs outside zone and kind of has a good system in place. Then obviously that'll change. But right now, it's like just a very it seems risky to me based on kind of where he's being projected right now. So and
Oh, I think you froze.
okay, well we just have keep having technical issues, and I apologize, guys.
All good.
Let's move on from the rookies and let's go to uh, have different rankings on. So I think um, the first one I wanted to kind of talk about was Garrett Wilson. You still have him in this second or this two first range next to JSN, Marvin Harrison, kind of AJ Brownish range. Um, kind of I don't know. I think for me, at a certain point, like we have, I do believe in the talent of Garrett Wilson. I think with the quarterback and kind of team uncertainty, I don't think Justin Fields is going to the passing attempts first of all, and then the amount of rushes he has. I think it's going to be very uh, he's going to have to be extremely efficient, which I think he could do it, but it's just not really a bet I really want to be making at his current cost. And I think the name value obviously is still there with Garrett Wilson, and I think he's still very talented. But I just think if I can swap him for one of those guys around him, and AJ Brown, even T Higgins, or if you can get like one of these lower players like a Worthy or kind of the Zay Flowers, Olave, Devonta Smith range, I think you're going to get pretty similar production. And if you can get a significant plus on top of it based on the name value, I think I'm just willing to do that at this point. Not completely out on him, but I just think we've been talking about situation so much for kind of all these different positions. And I just think he's just being buoyed kind of by his talent when it's going to be really hard for it to actually turn into fantasy points for me.
Yeah, I think for me it's just like it's going to be one of those things where I think he's just going to be funneled by Justin Fields, and it's definitely there's some projecting of efficiency. I mean, DJ Moore basically had to be extremely efficient to put up the numbers that he did that season with Justin Fields. But I'm not. I'm actually kind of willing to take the bet that Garrett Wilson is capable of doing that. I think he's a elite enough of a talent that he can kind of transcend Justin Fields' maybe lack of efficiency and lower volume. So I don't really see where else they're gonna go on that team with the ball, right? Like they don't have a clear second option to go to. So and they still will have to pass the ball. Like they're not going to be they're definitely going to be probably on the low end of volume. Maybe even the lowest, who knows? We'll see. But I think even with that, I expect Garrett Wilson to get like the fair share of that. He's going to be like a 32% like market player there. So yeah, and then the guys around him, like for example, like Marvin Harrison or JSN, are we that much more confident about their situation? Like JSN is going to be catching passes from Darnold, who outside of the KOC offense and Vikings offense, like we haven't really seen him put it together yet. And then Marvin Harrison, there's just a ton of projection with him as well, right? Like he didn't have like that great of a rookie season. It was fine, but it wasn't like what expectations were, right, for him. So I just think all three of them have question marks, and I don't necessarily think Garrett Wilson's question marks are that much more difficult to overcome than the other guys around him. And then yeah, with AJ Brown, same thing. I think it's just um, his situation also is a bit questionable to me because the pass volume there is obviously a lot lower than it's been in years past, with them having Saquon now, and I think his situation, I don't necessarily see AJ Brown's value increasing from this point, right? Um, he's someone that I think you're it's a fair price to pay for the likely outcome of like what the points he's going to give you, but there's also downside risk with him as well. That situation is maybe not going to improve, and if he does have um, a lower efficiency season or whatever the case may be, uh, I I don't think that I'm that much higher on AJ Brown's potential this year for scoring points, and that would be like a Garrett Wilson. I will project AJ Brown higher, but he is 3 years older, and there's other downside risk eventually with his profile. So yeah, I mean I'm fine with. I haven't really moved Garrett Wilson down after Justin Fields thing, but I totally understand the concerns and they're valid. Like that's
Yeah, I guess
there
yeah.
is downside. There's a downside risk there for sure.
Yeah, you make a good point. Like all those guys they have question marks about their situation. I guess really what I would take from that is more like I either want to use them to tier up to into one of the like a Drake London or
Yeah.
like a Nico or one of those guys, like the real big fish, because they do still hold that value, right? So I think if I could do that, or tier down into a guy that's going to give similar production, right? Like there's guys way down, all the way down, like we talk about like a Chris Godwin or Adams or something like that, where it's like they go 5 rounds later and you can get a pretty significant plus on top and you can kind of backfill the production with those guys and get a whatever a first or more on top. I just obviously it's not you don't want zero of those guys, and it's not like oh my god panic sell them. It's just it's kind of like it's one of the weirdest things that happens in Dynasty with these young wide receivers, and it's just kind of hard to parse that out in terms of do I really want these guys on my team? And it's like you don't want zero, but how much is too much. So
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. If I could tier up and get a London or a Lad, and the price to tier up might not be that high, um, I will try to do that. But we're both portfolio players, so we don't want to have zero of those guys either, and that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not actively buying Garrett Wilson right now. Like, let me just put that way. Like, he's a firm hold for me. And Marvin Harrison could be a buy. There's like I would say of those three in that range for me, he's he has the he has more potential for his value to go up than I would say like a JSN or Garrett Wilson, who I think are probably capped at where their ceiling will be for at least the short term. So
Yeah, I was definitely out on MHJ based on how high he's being pushed up. But yeah, I think now he is finally in a range where it's like he'll fall to like the late third sometimes. And yeah, just because I do have so little because of how high he was pushed up before, like I would be willing to take on some. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like I think he didn't have a super great rookie season, obviously, but I do think he is talented and just obviously like we talk about name value a lot. I think you're absolutely right. Like he could be back into the second round pretty quickly if he has a few big games during the season.
yep.
Yeah, and then AJ Brown, I think it's obviously he's older, so like he that plays a part, right? Like if you can get a guy that scores similarly and is a few years younger, you're going to default to the younger guy. I think AJ. I think the thing with the Eagles is it was so outlier on the rushing touchdowns and the low pass volume, and their defense was so good. I don't think that's sticky year to year. So I think obviously they're going to be on the lower volume of passing offenses just based on they want to run the ball and they're probably going to be up more than the average team. But I don't see it the same season playing out again. So I think even if it's a little bit better situation, if they do get rid of Dallas Goedert and it's a little bit more consolidated between him and Devonta Smith, I'm still willing to take that shot there, just based on the talent of AJ Brown. Um, and yeah, I mean his age isn't like super prohibitive. I think he's what 27, so it's not
Yeah,
like he's
27 and a half.
not yeah, it's not like he's
It's
like 31 or something or
he
even
still has plenty of
29.
years left for sure.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that situation even though it's still a little not the best, I still would prefer that over kind of the Jet situation and even the JSN situation. Honestly, I think MHJ that's a toss up for me, but yeah, it's an interesting range there. It's like you don't feel great about any of them, but you don't want zero.
Yeah, I mean, I think on a contender, having an AJ Brown over those two guys makes, or over those three guys makes a lot of sense. You're probably gonna that the range of outcomes is a bit higher for AJ Brown to like score like I would say 17 to 19 points per game. Like I don't really see uh, Garrett Wilson or Jason pushing up into that range. Like they could, but it's I would say AJ Brown has a higher chance of actually giving you that type of production. And that's good that you made the Goddard point. I was going to bring that up as well. I think that's a really good point. Something that we do need to consider. Goddard was not a zero as a player. He's actually like a quite reliable and capable tight end who's putting up good numbers when he was healthy. So and it seems like they're most likely moving him. So if it does get consolidated, I could see his numbers moving up a bit compared to last
Yeah,
year.
I mean it's just a slight boost, right? Like
Yeah,
if we're picking holes in all these guys, it's like yeah, and I don't think I know that the Eagles defense will be good. Like it'll probably still be top 10, right? But they did lose some pieces in the back end. And I think they're going to be trying to throw a little bit more than they were last year.
yep.
Um, so I think we're going to get out of here in a couple minutes, but one last one that I kind of want to talk about is kind of how to value Rashi Rice versus Xavier Worthy. Because yeah, I see you have them in the same tier, and I think I technically have them in different tiers, but it's like right at the border where it's like pretty much view them the same. Yeah, I just think with Worthy, if kind of with the injury stuff with Rashi, it's looking like he's recovering well, like he should be ready for week one. But obviously, we're still so far out; it's hard to really know. And then with the suspension risk, obviously, we don't want to bake that in too much because it is dynasty. But I think Worthy has. I just think people are still too low on Worthy. I still think he falls to like this mid sixth round sometimes in startups. So I see you're higher on him as well, and I think I mean, he's like a third round pick in underdog drafts right now. So it's like
Yep.
he's going high in redraft and best ball. He will probably get a bump due to the Rashi stuff, whether it's injury or suspension or both. And I mean, I think when it's both of them together, maybe he has a little bit of a lower ceiling, but I do, we saw him at the end of the season and during the playoffs, him really come on and kind of get both, being able to take advantage of both, getting some scheme touches, which probably some of those will go away, obviously with Rashi Rice back and healthy, but he'll still get some of those short area targets. And then obviously Mahomes hasn't really been throwing the ball deep as of late. But I think that is still in his bag of tricks for both Worthy and for Mahomes. So I think he has a lot of both of those guys have a lot of room to increase in value, and I think both of them would be targets where they're going right now in drafts.
Yeah, I think there's some people that are just fading Worthy based on his like early season production, and then just maybe his portfolio, like his profile as like a player coming in. And, but if you're leaning too heavy one way or another, it's not the right approach. Uh, I think we should be open-minded to the fact that Worthy could at some point just overtake Rashi Rice as a player as well. It's not like Rashi Rice is some elite otherworldly player. He's like a good player, obviously, but I think the situation definitely and the role that he plays for that team definitely adds to his value and why he is able to put up those numbers, right? And we kind
Yeah,
of saw Worthy be used in that Rice type role in the playoffs and then in the later half of the season too. So, and Worthy honestly was putting up pretty solid numbers. So I think those two definitely should be in the similar range. And I think it's something that the Dynasty uh, market hasn't caught up with the best ball rankings like you mentioned. So
yeah.
I'm just trying to stay ahead of that too. And I'm not like a huge fan of Worthy, but I I'm not gonna say one outcome is more likely than the other when you compare him to Rice. So
Yeah, yeah. I just think it's uh, people are still worried about kind of the size and just like everything going on with him, and I just think it's a little bit. I mean, I think he just has such high upside. Like just as a player, situation, everything. It's not being baked in enough. So.
yeah, yep.
All right, Ferris. Well, I am going to get out of here. I hope you have a great day. Apologies to you for the technical issues and to everyone in the audience, but I will make sure I get it locked in for next time. I haven't been on my normal schedule or anything, so appreciate you coming on. Great to finally meet you over a screen. And any closing words for us?
No, just glad we were able to do this. We've been like competing and playing with each other, and talking about fantasy for quite some time now. So it's awesome to get on stream and be able to chat some ball with you. And yeah, I'm sure we'll do this many more. Like we're have a lot of leagues together, and best ball season's coming up. So looking forward to that, and excited for the rookie draft this next month.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to have you on again. Appreciate you coming on, brother, and we will see you guys next time. Thanks.
All right, later.